Welcome to our charter chat. This is the November 30th charter chat. Next slide, please. So please remember that everyone needs to, our Zoom etiquette is keep yourself on mute. You can put questions into the chat. There will be Q&A at the end. And I'm going to turn this over to Allison now so that she can talk about our Zoom update info.
Hi folks, Allison Ball from the CDE. Just to let you all know, and some of you may have already seen this from last session if you joined us in October, there were some recent Zoom updates which have impacted some of our registration. So if you're finding yourself having to re-register, apologies on that. I think that may be happening for some folks out there, and we'll give folks a little extra time to join us if that's impacting folks who are not currently in the room with us. But I think that we should be set now. We have updated some of the CASI Charter Chat meeting security settings. That does include making sure that all attendees are authenticating. So please do that before joining us. And of course, you've got to register ahead of time to make sure that we've got you assigned to the correct breakout room. And if you turn out to get directed to the wrong breakout room, please just rejoin us in the main room. We'll be able to reassign you and move you over to the correct breakout room. Of course, at any point during the charter chat, you see all of us, the co-hosts in the room, please feel free to message any of us at any time if you have any concerns or any support needs during the session.
So please remember that this session is being recorded. However, we will only be recording in the main room. The breakout rooms are not recorded. Today, we are going to be covering several hot topics related to program and fiscal oversight. We do have a guest speaker who will be discussing non-classroom based funding determinations. And as I indicated earlier, we will have a breakout of rooms by affiliation and by region. Next slide, please. So I am Dr. Michelle Johnson. I am the Associate Director of the Santa Clara County Office of Education. With me are Matt Doherty, Shalu Sharma, and Cynthia Tapia. Mifala Fairley, our Executive Director, is unavailable at this moment, but she also sends her well wishes. Next slide, please. And we are also with our partners from CCAP, Tom Hutton and Dr. David Patterson. And Debbie Deal is also maybe here. I'm not sure if she's going to be joining us or not. We also have members from the CDE. Cassie is the Charter Authorizer Support Initiative. And we work under the auspices of the CDE along with CCAP to provide this information. So next slide, please. And I'm going to turn this over to Tom.
And this is we just like to have this moment in every charter chat where we say we haven't forgotten you. So we get some questions onto the table in our breakout sessions and then in the reporting out. And some of those things we say, okay, duly noted. When we have some more information on that, you'll find it in a future charter chat and might even rise to the level of one of our quarterly trainings. So this is just the list of things that are by way of saying we have not forgotten. These things are out there for everybody, particularly the third item. Everybody has renewal on the brain. And our quarterly training, you'll hear from Matt later in January, is going to focus on that. But these are all things that we're keeping on our radar, so stay tuned on them.
Awesome. Next slide, please. So, Matt.
So at our previous charter chat, we had lots of questions around renewal. We invite everyone to please come to the January quarterly meeting on January 13th from 9 to 11 to get additional answers and insights on renewal questions that we've had. We have seen interest in a Southern California and a Northern California Bay Area in-person session and a possible Central California in-person session. We invite you to please talk with your colleagues, encourage them to complete that interest survey, by December 16th, so we can get a 10-member minimum for in order to host that in-person training session. And I will drop the quarterly training interest survey link into the chat. So I'm done here. And next slide.
Dave.
So one of the good things that Cassie does is we get questions from the field, and they give us an opportunity to say, oh, we didn't, it's good that we answer it for one, because that means others probably had the same question. And so we received one from the field where it was a county office where a charter was coming up for renewal. And in the past that they had contacted the original district to see if they wanted to take the school back. And there was a question, is there a legal requirement here to do that? And the answer is no. There's no statutory requirement for the County Office of Education, which approved the charter on appeal, to include a local district in the renewal process. Now, there's so that's the simple, straightforward answer, no. Now, just for a little bit of background, if there is a situation where it's now pretty much fading away in the past, where a state board approved charter, where they actually had a process where it could be returned back to the original district where it was originally denied. But that doesn't apply, and there's no obligation for the county office to, in fact, go back to the local district. So hopefully that answers that question, not only for the one person, but also for all of us, and you have a little trivia along the way.
All right, next slide, please. So a quick update on the State Board of Education. The Advisory Commission on Charter Schools meeting for October was canceled due to lack of items for review. And the State Board meeting was held on November 2nd and 3rd. And the agenda included Student Advisory Board report presentations, CASP and LP information, but there were no charter school items. The next ACCS meeting is going to be held on December 8th. So put that on your calendar. Next slide. So now we're going to move into hot topics. We have hot topics in program and in fiscal, and I'm going to now go to the next slide and turn it over to Tom about the program oversight.
Yeah, and these are all very quick sort of FYI updates, and we have some links to share. I don't have them handy, so hopefully somebody from the department can help us with that. But the first is that there has been some discussion about reopening the list of adopted academic progress indicators, verified data, so expanding potentially the list of 14 board-approved indicators. And there is an opportunity for you to keep apprised of what's happening and whether that conversation is going forward and how. And I think there was a way that people could ask for that. Was there? I can't remember whether it's an email or there's a web link. Can somebody help me out here? Sorry.
Yes, for the request for additional assessments for the verified data list, there is an email address, and all links included are on the resource page.
Oh, that's right. And just in general, anything we talk about in these charter chats, you will be able to find on the department's CASI website. So you can look there for it. Secondly, Michelle just alluded to this as being a topic at the board, but the new interpretation guide for CASP, and that includes LPAC and NAEP and everything else is in there. Just laying out kind of how things are going and how the data should or maybe shouldn't be interpreted. The big picture is, you've probably seen the reporting. This is sort of the emergence from the dip in assessments that happened while everything was shut down. And so we now have a new kind of baseline to proceed from. And then it goes into some detail about how things look in terms of how much learning loss happened. And maybe there's a few bright spots on that as well. But in terms of authorizer implications for comparability and statewide data and that kind of thing, it's available, and the link will be there as well. And then finally, there's the wonderful charter school database, which you can sort in a number of ways online. It's sortable by the school, it's sortable by the county, it's sortable by the district, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. It's sortable by one other link, and I can't remember what that one was. But just a note that we were just discussing before the meeting began. The column that indicates district, actually, the label of district has to do with the inclusion of that school's student data, where it gets included. So it's called district, but it actually corresponds to the authorizer. So you'll find under district, sometimes it'll say the county column will be which county is it located in. So the example might be El Dorado County. And then under district, it'll say El Dorado County Office of Education, because that's where the data goes. In other words, that's the authorizer. So that's a helpful reference. And the suggestion is perhaps you may want to take a look and just verify that the data in there is correct. It has things like the charter term, so that and whether it's locally funded or direct funded. It has the information about whether it's non-classroom based. So it's a very short list of information, but just to verify your own portfolio information is correct might be worth taking a quick look. That's it for this one.
So next slide, please. We are now going to move into fiscal and turn the time over to Cynthia.
Thank you, Michelle. So today we want to take the time to provide a reminder of 2 items with a December 15 deadline. The first item is the audit report. An annual independent audit of a charter school is required by Education Code 41020, Subdivision H, and 47605, Subdivision M. A charter school must submit copies of the prior year audit report to its chartering authority, the County Office of Education, the State Controller, and the CDE by no later than December 15. Please note that unlike the audits for fiscal years 1920 and 2021, the state did not make any changes to the audit timelines. Therefore, if charter schools need an audit extension, they must obtain it through the chartering authority. If an audit extension is granted, the authorizer then notifies the CDE and the state controllers of the extension. And given that this deadline is 15 days away, it is recommended that authorizers confirm with their charter schools that they are on track to meet this deadline. The second item is that is also due on or before December 15 is the first interim. As required by Education Code 47604.33, charter schools must prepare and submit to its chartering authority and the County of Superintendent of Schools a first interim financial report for the period ending October 31st. And now for the topic on non-classroom based funding determination requests, we are joined today.
Cynthia,
Sure
a
thing.
question just came in. Before you turn it over to McKenna,
Sounds
what
good.
is the maximum amount of time that an authorizer can provide an extension for?
I don't recall if there is a maximum. I would say that by experience with our shop, we are granting them anywhere from February 15 to February 28. So it has to be within reason. Just word of advice, given the staffing shortages that the entire industry is struggling with, including auditors, it is something that is in top of mind and a subject matter that our charter schools are coming to authorizers to ask for an extension. So I would just suggest to do it within reason and ensure that you are often checking in on the progress on those items.
Thanks so much for answering that on the fly. Good job.
Mi- Michelle?
No problem.
Michelle, could I add to that?
Absolutely.
The only additional advice is to determine what's the reason for the delay. If it's in fact, as Cynthia just talked about, the fact that it's very hard on staffing, that's one thing. But if there's other issues that aren't related to the auditor's availability, that also triggers a level of interest and concern. I'll just leave it at that.
Absolutely. I guess one thing to build on is that we actually specifically asked from our charter schools to provide a letter directly from the auditors as to providing a reason why the extension is needed. So something along those lines may be suggested as documentation. And I believe that's the only question in that regard. So now for the non-classroom based funding determination request topic, we are joined today by McKenna Huey from CDE's Charter Schools Division, who will share some information and resources on these requests.
All right, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is McKenna Huey, and I am a manager in the Charter Schools Division with the California Department of Education. And I will go ahead and talk about non-classroom based determination of funding requests. Can I get the next slide, please? All right. So California Education Code section 47612.5E1 and California Code of Regulations Title 5 section 11963 specify the requirements for classroom-based instruction and school site conditions. For the purposes of funding on the basis of average daily attendance, or ADA, a charter school is considered operating as a non-classroom based charter school if its total ADA is less than 80% classroom-based. Now, if a charter school's classroom-based ADA falls below 80% of its total ADA, it may not receive local control funding formula, or LCFF funding, for its non-classroom-based or independent study ADA, unless the school has an active funding determination. So charter schools with classroom-based ADA to non-classroom-based ADA ratios projected near the 80% minimum may obtain a funding determination to ensure against LCFF funding impacts should they unexpectedly fall below that 80% threshold. Now, it is important to note that a charter school's status as non-classroom based or classroom based is not dependent upon it having or not having an approved funding determination. Rather, a charter school status is determined by its reported ADA at its second principal apportionment certification. Next slide, please. So pursuant to Education Code section 47612.5D, to obtain a funding determination, a charter school must submit a request for a determination of funding to the California State Board of Education, or SBE, for approval. In order to establish appropriate funding levels for their non-classroom based instruction, charter schools are required to submit a funding determination form with school information and categorized expenditure levels to the California Department of Education, or CDE. Now, the funding determination form was developed by the CDE pursuant to relevant California Code of Regulations Title 5. The form is available on the non-classroom based determination of funding webpage, which is linked here on this slide. Now, upon a charter school submission of a funding determination form, the form is reviewed by CDE staff and presented to the Advisory Commission on Charter Schools, or the ACCS, along with the CDE's recommendation. The request is then presented to the SBE for final approval. Next slide, please. So funding determinations are based on schools' total expenditures for certificated employee salaries and benefits and instruction and related services. Per regulations, charter schools may be approved by the SBE to receive 100% funding for their non-classroom based ADA, 85%, 70%, or 0% funding, which would essentially be a denial of their funding determination. Now, each funding level maintains specific criteria that charter schools must meet in order to be funded at that level. These criteria are designated in regulations. Most charter schools receive a funding level, most charter schools request a funding level of 100%. And in order to be funded at this level, charter schools must meet the following three criteria. They must first spend at least 40% of their revenues on instructional certificated salaries and benefits. 2, spend at least 80% of their revenues on instruction and related services. And 3, maintain a pupil to teacher ratio that does not exceed 25:1, or the equivalent ratio of pupils to full-time certificated employees for all other educational programs operated by the largest unified school district in the county. Next slide. Pursuant to regulations, funding determination requests may be approved for a period of 2 to 5 years. It is the CDE's current practice to recommend approvals between 2 to 4 years based on the number of years a charter school has been in operation, as well as based upon the number of times it has obtained a funding determination. Now, in the past, the CDE used to recommend 5-year periods dependent on a charter school's academic performance index, or API ranking. However, because API is no longer calculated, the CDE does not recommend 5-year funding determination periods. Next slide. So for non-classroom based charter schools that do not meet the prescribed spending requirements, regulations permit the ECCS to find a reasonable basis or mitigating circumstance by which to make another recommendation. So a charter school that does not meet the criteria for a specific level of funding may choose to submit mitigating circumstances as a part of its funding determination request. And this is done by the charter school completing section 6 of the funding determination form. Next slide. Mitigating circumstances may include documented data regarding the individual circumstances of the school. Some examples of mitigating circumstances include, but are not limited to, one-time unique or exceptional expenses for facilities, the acquisition of a school bus, or restricted grants of funds awarded to the school that cannot be expended on teacher salaries. So on the funding determination form, the charter school should explain why it failed to meet the regulatory requirements for funding, as well as describe the specific actions it took to try to meet those funding criteria. And the CDE may request additional information from the charter school in support of its mitigating circumstances submission. Next slide. So funding determination request submission deadlines. So for an existing charter school that currently has a funding determination that expires at the end of fiscal year 2022-23, renewal funding determination requests must be received by the CDE by February 1, 2023. And that's required in order for schools to continue to receive funding for their non-classroom based instruction for fiscal year 2023-24 and beyond. Now, we do want to note that it is critical that SBE authorized charter schools meet this February 1 regulatory deadline, as it is not possible for these schools to obtain a waiver from the SBE for permission to submit a late request. Now, failure to submit the funding determination request by the deadline will result in lost funding for the school's non-classroom based ADA. And we would also like to note that our division does work very diligently to ensure that all charter schools whose funding determinations are due to expire are aware of the deadline to renew. So we send multiple emails to our listservs, as well as to the individual charter schools who are required to submit by February 1 in the preceding months. Additionally, about a week or two before the deadline, we actually go and we make individual phone calls to the schools who have not yet submitted their funding determination form to us. Next slide. So for an existing charter school that has not previously had a funding determination and are offering non-classroom based instruction for the 2022-23 fiscal year, the deadlines for the CDE to receive a completed funding determination form are presented on this slide. So the CDE notes that charter schools may experience significant fiscal impacts to their LCFF funding if funding determination requests are not submitted timely. So in order to receive funding for its non-classroom based ADA at P1, existing charter schools seeking funding for their non-classroom based ADA for 2022-23 must have a funding determination approved by the SBE by its January 2023 meeting. Next slide. So it is the charter school's responsibility to submit a funding determination request for approval by the SBE. There is no legal or formal role for charter school authorizers in the funding determination process. However, it is very important for authorizers to be knowledgeable about how non-classroom based charter schools are funded, as they provide oversight for the fiscal health of their approved charter schools. Additionally, the Charter Schools Division may reach out to the charter school authorizer if the charter school has been unresponsive to the division in the funding determination process. Next slide. So detailed information regarding funding determinations is available on the non-classroom based determination of funding webpage, which is linked here on this slide. And if you have any specific questions regarding funding determinations, please feel free to email those to the Charter Schools Division. We have a specific email inbox for all things funding determination, and that is charter-sb740@cde.ca.gov. And that concludes my presentation on funding determinations. I'm happy to try to answer any questions that anyone may have.
So there is a question. Site-based charter schools do not submit a funding determination, right?
Typically, that is correct. Yes. Now, if a site-based charter school, does offer independent study or non-classroom based instruction, we do recommend that they submit a funding determination if their classroom-based ADA is at or would is close to falling below 80% of their total ADA. So
another question, have any changes been made to the level of scrutiny applied to funding determinations since the findings related to the A3 scandal?
So, since I've been a manager over this office and kind of over this program for the last 3 years, we have, we definitely are very thorough in our reviews. That's not, I want to say that's not necessarily because of the A3 scandal, that's just our process. But, we do look at each funding determination on a, pursuant to regulations as well as on a case-by-case basis. So, we do have certain standards that we use when we're reviewing these requests.
And another question, just to confirm, an existing charter with a funding determination due date of February 1st, 2023 would have until that date to submit to CDE their funding determination, right?
That is correct. So an existing charter school with a funding determination that is set to expire at the end of this current fiscal year, they must submit no later than February 1, 2023.
Great. Thank you so much, McKenna. We really appreciate you stopping by and answering all of our questions and providing info.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, next slide, please. So now we're going to move into breakout rooms. As Allison mentioned before, everyone should have the right identification. We've now dropped the Jamboard link into the chat, and we are going to jump into breakout rooms. Because our January quarterly meeting is focused on renewals, and we've had lots of questions about renewals, we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to add more questions about renewals that you might have into the Jamboard and into these breakout rooms. So hopefully everyone's ready, and Amy, do your magic. All right. So thank you all. I hope that the breakout rooms were helpful. I know in the Southern room, we had lots of questions about renewal. Please make sure that you fill out our survey. And if you have more questions about renewal, please go back and add them to the Jamboard so that we make sure that all your questions get answered. Tom.
Yes.
The upcoming events. Oh, I think I'm a slide ahead. Question and answer.
Are we reporting out from our?
Sure, let's report out. So let's go to the, so the Southern Room had lots of questions about renewal. Central.
I think we were a little quiet at first, but one question we all sort of centered around or had many sort of stars on was, is it acceptable as authorizers to ask our schools for access to the systems they're using for those alternate data, right? So like if NWA Like, can we ask them for raw data files de-identified so we can sort of do our own, review of it? Or are we just sort of, is that overreaching and we have to take what they provide to us? So that was the big, I think, sort of central question that a lot of people said, oh yeah, I have that question too.
So I think the answer is you can ask. You can ask, and hopefully you've already written it into your MOUs, but at least that's my understanding. But
Yeah, I think to add to that is, if you're asking, one would hope that you have the level of sophistication in your shop to be able to do justice to the analysis. One of the challenges is that your shop might be very well versed in one, say NWEA, but somebody's using a different one, and you're frankly probably trying to understand it, but you may not have the depth of understanding. There, it's whether you want the raw data file or a deeper understanding of the tool they're using. Those are, I think, are often intertwining questions.
well said, Dave.
From our point of view, there's ed code that says that they can't deny any reasonable request, and it's a reasonable request if they're going to put data into their renewal, that we verify that data. We have to remember this is internal data. This isn't stuff we get on DataQuest or anything like that, and so they can't just put any number in there. We have to be able to verify that those numbers are correct, and so we always ask for a login. They just add us into, let's say, NWEA, and we log in and we print the report. So if they give you the raw data report, right, they give you the summary report that is the one that you're going to print out anyways, then that's fine. We see the actual data, not their massaged charts. But we always ask for it because we want to verify.
Right.
So I think this is an interesting question because we have not asked for this in the past, the de-identified data. But I think, and I frankly get a little bit nervous about just committing to that level of analysis, just because we have so many. And if you do it for one, you would need to do it for all other, otherwise I think you're opening yourself up to questions, about why not. But it actually made me think while you were talking about it that maybe one way to kind of split the difference is to actually set the expectation to have a data meeting where they would bring the de-identified data for you and their data person, and that it would be a data conversation, and you could actually get even more from that conversation about what they are able to answer and what they are not. And so that would give you a little bit more than the summary reports, but it would also tell you a lot more about their data capacity and their ability to analyze. And that way you're not putting the onus on staff, and you're not getting into this situation of you having to do the analysis. And that way it's more of a building of a capacity on that level. So if we were to do anything, it would most likely be that.
I like that idea, but there's also just verifying the numbers, right? As opposed to doing analysis.
Right.
If they're putting numbers in, you should be able to find out where they got those numbers. And if you can't,
right,
then there's an issue. Like, where did this number come from? And you could just ask them, where did you get this number?
Right.
Right. And it's that kind of verification. If you're not going to do analysis separately, at least, we can verify that the numbers that they put in weren't typos.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that is also something that we would be looking for. So I'm trying to get for them to build their capacity rather than our staff building the capacity to do that. Because it really shouldn't be us, yes, we need to verify, and yes, we need to understand where the data comes from, but that really shouldn't be authorizing staff doing that. So I think that there's some way to maybe make it, and I'm glad that we're talking about it because it is making me think about, how we are going to approach that.
This has been a very good short conversation. I think you both were putting some really good points on the table.
Northern.
Northern. Well, we had a fair share of ours, and please, members jump in. I'm going to start with the one that probably we spent a good amount of time on, which was verified data, and a high level of interest of one that it does need some additional homework, and the field wants to participate in the conversations, and also concerned about the tight timeframes. I know a number of things are, well, our impression is a number of things are going on within the department and such, but the, renewals, the clock is moving forward, and there is the interest in doing that. So there is part of that on that one. On a very different one, we also talked about complaints and how there needs to be we had an authorizer who was getting all of a sudden a bunch of complaints, and we talked about how to make sure you have a process on your website and about how to redirect them back to the school in appropriate processes, and that this is also your opportunity to verify that the school has the information available and is being responsive. I think that was a second piece, oh, and then I think it was this San Mateo County Office of Education is doing a mock renewal this year as a way to help their school, help an authorizer understand what the processes are for the process, so when they have to do it real next time that they're. And I thought that was a very interesting and innovative approach that I hadn't heard before.
Awesome.
Anyone else?
Tom, our non-authorizer partners, we've got 2 minutes.
Okay, well, I can keep it brief. It was, again, as with the Southern, it was mostly some discussion of renewal, but Suzanne from CSDC and Nicholas and Jonathan from CCSA, as well as Ina, our consultant friend, we're all in there. And I guess, and McKenna joined us, and I told her she did a great job because there were no follow-up questions to her presentation, which means she made everything very clear on her part of it. We were happy to have her join us as well. On renewals, I guess just a couple quick takeaways is we have been urging schools to establish contact with their authorizers if they don't have that contact yet on this topic. And, there is sometimes for the smaller authorizers, they're a little quiet in responding, and it may be because they're not entirely sure yet themselves how they're going to do things. So our little shout out to our world of authorizers is just responding anyway to say, stay tuned, we're working on it, is maybe reassuring more to the particularly the mom and pop schools that are anxious about what's happening. Just knowing that communication line is established is probably helpful for both sides in a situation where there's some stress and there's some uncertainty. And then we commend to your attention, just as an FYI, if you haven't seen it, that CSDC and CCSA did come out with a memo or a joint statement about the CDE memo that laid out some of the answers for us. They have some concerns about it. I think that we can be upfront about that, but it helps us as authorizers to kind of see what the discussion is. And as we head into our January quarterly discussions, to kind of know where different people are looking at and what different issues and what the areas of concern or the unanswered questions are.
Great. All right, so next slide. It's now 11:01. We have our next meeting will actually be in January, our quarterly regional trainings. That'll be on the road to renewal, and we're going to be holding it in. We will figure out how to get everyone that memo. If you haven't seen it yet, we'll figure out how to get that to you. Our upcoming will be in January. Virtual will be January 13th. In person will be authorizers only, but we need to make sure that there's at least 10 people interested in an area. So if you have not filled out your interest survey on how you want to attend the Road to Renewal, please make sure that you do that by December 16th.
Hey, Michelle, can I chime in on that one real quick?
Absolutely.
Just because this is different, we may have talked about it in the last month's charter chat. You know, we tried before to sort of identify a site that could host North, Central, and South, and we're kind of flipping it on its head right now and saying, if you would be interested in convening in person and there's others near you, or you would be interested in hosting a place and you think you can find 10 people, just fill out the survey and we can sort of do a plot and see who's where. But it really is, if there are 10 people, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be with one of our partner county offices. It could be if you've got enough people at your site district, at your district site, just let us know in the survey and we'll try to see if there's enough interest to hold the in-person ones.
All right. So that is it. If you haven't filled out our survey for our meeting, please do so. And thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day. We'll see you next year at our Charter Chat in January.
Thanks, everybody.